At 3:47 a.m., every executive phone at Consolidated Trust Bank lit up with the same alert. Their entire secure data portal was dead. 15 years of custom infrastructure gone. The CEO was on the phone, his voice cracking. The CTO was scrolling through logs showing nothing but cascading failures. The overnight team was in full panic mode, typing commands that accomplished absolutely nothing. And me, I was asleep in my apartment across town, phone on silent, sleeping better than I had in 18 months. Because 24 hours earlier, I'd walked out of that bank carrying a small box of personal items and something far more valuable. Every ounce of institutional knowledge that kept their systems breathing. They had the code. They had the documentation. What they didn't have was the understanding. And in infrastructure architecture, that's the entire difference between a functioning bank and a digital graveyard. The CTO had made that painfully clear when he stood in front of 87 people and called me a replaceable code monkey. 15 years of building their entire technical foundation, reduced to 6 words. I'd smiled at him and given him 4 words back. Good luck configuring it. Welcome to the Payback Office channel, where we tell stories about what happens when loyalty runs into disrespect, and people finally figure out what they're worth. We're building a community that believes respect has to flow both ways at work. And we're closing in on 6,000 subscribers who understand that some things aren't as replaceable as management likes to think. Subscribe if that sounds like you. My name is Margaret Holloway. For 15 years I was the senior infrastructure architect at Consolidated Trust Bank, not a programmer, not a developer, the person who built every critical system the bank ran on. Before any of that, I grew up watching my father fix neighbors' cars for free in our driveway, and my mother teach piano to kids whose families couldn't pay for lessons. I learned something early: empathy matters, because when you understand that real people depend on what you build it differently. That's how I approached every line of code. Behind every authentication protocol was a single mother checking her balance at midnight. Behind every transaction system was a small business owner making payroll. Behind every security layer was an elderly couple protecting their retirement savings. I joined Consolidated Trust in 2009, right as the financial crisis had banks on life support and customer trust at zero. They were desperate for someone who could build systems that actually held. I was 28, hungry, ready to prove myself. What I walked into was a nightmare. Legacy systems held together with hope and duct tape, security holes everywhere, processing speeds straight out of the dial-up era. They gave me 6 months to rebuild everything without a single minute of downtime. Most people would have run. I got to work. 16-hour days, running on coffee and the satisfaction of watching clean code compile. I rebuilt authentication from the ground up, redesigned the entire database architecture, and built redundancy so sophisticated that servers could fail and customers would never notice. Here's what made it special. I built in what I called cascade protection. Every major system carried 3 layers of fail-safes. If the primary authentication server dropped, a secondary activated within milliseconds. If that failed too, a tertiary engaged, all invisible to the end user. I even programmed the systems to send me encrypted alerts about potential failures before they became actual problems. I'd get a notification on my phone, fix it remotely, and nobody would ever know we'd come within 30 minutes of catastrophe. For months later we went live. 0 downtime. 0 complaints. Transaction speeds up 300%. Security auditors called it the tightest banking infrastructure they'd ever tested. CEO Arnold Richardson shook my hand and told me I'd save the company. My salary doubled. But what actually mattered was that I'd built something I was genuinely proud of. Over the following 15 years, that infrastructure became legendary. I built mobile banking capability before most banks understood what a smartphone was for. I built fraud detection algorithms that saved the company $17 million in the first year alone, catching patterns human analysts missed entirely. The system analyzed transaction behavior in real time and flagged anomalies within seconds. When a retired teacher in Ohio had her card number stolen, my system blocked the fraudulent charges before they even processed. She never knew her information had been compromised, because the system handled it automatically. I built customer data protection systems that became the industry benchmark. Other banks literally studied our security architecture in their own training programs. Recruiters called constantly, dangling bigger salaries, better titles, relocation to New York or San Francisco. I always said no. Consolidated Trust was my home. I'd built every critical line of code they ran on. I knew every system like it was part of me. Then the executives changed. Arnold retired. New leadership came in from investment banking, people who saw technology as a cost center instead of the foundation everything else stood on. The culture shifted hard. Collaboration got replaced with hierarchy worship. Meetings multiplied. Actual working time disappeared. But I adapted, kept the systems running flawlessly. Our uptime stayed legendary, 99.97% over a decade. While competitors dealt with outages and furious customers, ours could reach their accounts anytime, anywhere. Then 18 months ago, they hired Nathan Cross as CTO. Nathan came from a social media company, where he'd been middle management. His technical knowledge was surface level. His ego was not. In our first meeting, he made his agenda clear. Everything I'd built was outdated. He needed to modernize, which really meant he needed visible projects to justify his salary. Never mind that our systems outperformed everyone else's, never mind our spotless security record. He brought in a consulting firm, kids fresh out of coding boot camps, excited about frameworks they'd learned 6 months earlier. Their recommendation: a complete overhaul, migrate everything to whatever was trendy. Timeline 3 years. Cost $40 million. I wrote a detailed response explaining why their plan would decrease performance and increase vulnerabilities, and showed how we could incrementally update for a fraction of the cost while keeping stability intact. Nathan called me into his office the next morning. The glass walls meant everyone could see us, though not hear us. He was standing when I walked in, clearly trying to establish dominance. "Margaret, this pushback needs to stop. You're undermining my authority." "I'm providing technical analysis," I replied calmly. His face reddened. "Your analysis is biased. You're protecting your legacy code because you're afraid of change. I'm protecting 15 years of proven performance. Our systems outperform our competitors. Why break what isn't broken?" "Because this is 2023, not 2009, he snapped. "You built decent systems for their time, but technology moves forward. You can either move with it or get left behind." I kept my voice level. "Nathan, the consulting firm missed critical dependencies. If we migrate the authentication system without updating the API calls first, we'll get cascading failures. This isn't old versus new. It's about understanding how these systems interconnect." He leaned back, a condescending smile spreading. "Margaret, you've been here so long you think you're irreplaceable. You're not. I could hire 3 developers for your salary who understand modern architecture better than you do." The insult just sat there. Through the glass, I could see other team members pretending not to watch. "Is that a threat?" I asked quietly. "It's reality. This migration is happening whether you support it or not. Get on board, or find somewhere else that appreciates your vintage expertise." I stood to leave, then turned back. "Nathan, when this migration fails, and it will, remember this conversation." Over the next 2 weeks, Nathan turned openly hostile. He cut me out of planning meetings I'd run for years. He reassigned my team members to his own pet projects. In daily stand-ups, he'd interrupt my technical updates with dismissive comments. "Margaret's being overly cautious again." With a theatrical eye roll. "We need to think bigger, move faster." The breaking point came in a meeting with Linda Martinez, our senior VP of operations, discussing the timeline for mobile app updates. A project I'd run successfully for 8 years. "The mobile authentication needs to sync with the new API before we push any updates," I explained. "Otherwise customers won't be able to log in." Nathan cut me off. "That's exactly the kind of outdated thinking that's holding us back. The new authentication protocol handles backwards compatibility automatically." "No, it doesn't," I said firmly. "I've read the documentation. The API endpoints are completely different. We need transition logic or—" "Margaret." Nathan's voice boomed across the room. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're so stuck in your old ways you can't see the obvious solution. Maybe it's time to let people who understand modern development take the lead." Linda looked uncomfortable. "Nathan, Margaret's managed mobile development successfully for years. Her track record speaks for itself." "Her track record is maintaining old systems," Nathan shot back. "We need innovation, not maintenance. Margaret, maybe it's time you considered a role more suited to your skill level. Documentation specialist, perhaps, or system monitoring. The room went dead silent. He was publicly demoting me to entry level in front of everyone. My face burned with humiliation and rage. My skill level built everything you're trying to replace, I said quietly. And when your migration fails, you'll understand why. Nathan's smile went cold. If you're so confident it'll fail, maybe you should put your money where your mouth is. Stay and watch it succeed, or leave and miss the transformation. He then dismissed my objections in a company-wide email, calling my thinking outdated, calling me resistant to innovation, saying I was clinging to legacy approaches while the industry moved forward. The disrespect was public and deliberate. Colleagues avoided eye contact. My input got ignored. Projects I'd led for years got reassigned to Nathan's new hires. I requested a private meeting, stayed professional, laid out my concerns strictly on technical grounds. Nathan leaned back, hands laced behind his head. You need to accept that your way of doing things is over. The bank is moving into the modern era, with or without you. Developers are abundant and cheap. Your experience doesn't create the leverage you think it does. Over the following months, my role got dismantled piece by piece. Responsibilities stripped, projects canceled, my team reassigned. Nathan was forcing me out without technically firing me. I watched his people modify systems they didn't understand, small changes that betrayed a fundamental misreading of the architecture. I flagged the issues, got ignored. Then one day I noticed something that made my blood run cold. One of Nathan's developers had modified the cascade protection system I'd built. They'd simplified it, calling my 3-layer design redundant and inefficient, and reduced it to a single fail-safe. I immediately filed an incident report explaining that this had gutted our entire safety net, that if the primary system now failed, there was no backup. Nathan's response email was dismissive. Modern cloud architecture doesn't require outdated redundancy protocols. I printed that email and filed it away in my personal records. Then came the meeting that ended everything. Nathan gathered the entire technology department for a big announcement. He'd negotiated a partnership with a major cloud provider. A complete migration, timeline 8 months. I raised my hand. What about data security during migration? What about the system dependencies? The authentication protocols hard-coded into 17 different subsystems. Nathan's face flushed. He cut me off mid-question. Margaret, you're acting like you're irreplaceable. You're not. You're just a code monkey who's been here too long. We have dozens of developers who can do what you do. This migration is happening. Get on board or get out of the way. The room went silent. 87 people holding their breath. I stood there processing. 15 years of excellence, dedication, innovation reduced to just a code monkey. Then I smiled, the kind of smile that arrives when everything suddenly becomes clear. Good luck configuring it. I walked straight to my office, typed my resignation effective immediately, copied HR, Nathan, and the CEO. No explanation, no grievance, just, I'm resigning and will not be available for transition assistance. I packed my things and walked out. Before leaving the building, I did one last thing. I logged into my admin account and changed my password to something nobody would ever guess. Then enabled 2-factor authentication tied to my personal phone. I didn't delete anything. I didn't sabotage anything. I never touched a single line of code. But I did lock the administrative account that held override access to every system configuration, the account that could manually reboot the cascade protection, the account that could bypass authentication sequences during updates. That account was now inaccessible. They'd figure it out eventually, they had root access to everything. But it would take time, and in complex infrastructure, time is everything. My phone started ringing before I even reached the parking lot. I let every call go to voicemail. At home, I opened my laptop. 3 recruiter emails were already waiting, including one from Vertex Finance, a smaller competitor that had tried to hire me twice before. Their CEO, Catherine Wu, was a former programmer who understood that technology wasn't support. It was the core business. I sent her a short email. My status had changed, I was exploring opportunities. She responded within 20 minutes. Breakfast meeting tomorrow morning, her office. I arrived at 7 a.m. with a presentation, nothing confidential, but enough to show what I could build. Architecture diagrams, performance metrics, security protocols. Catherine came with her CFO, Thomas Palmer, and her head of technology, Alan Yashida. We talked for 3 hours. They asked sharp, informed questions, and actually understood the technical details. Alan was refreshingly honest. Our systems work, but they're not special. We're competitive, but not leading. We need someone who can build what puts us ahead. Catherine asked the key question. How long to build what we need? I thought it over carefully. Starting from scratch with proper resources. 18 months for something exceptional. Catherine smiled. What if you weren't starting from scratch? If you brought proven frameworks and approaches? I understood exactly what she was asking. The code belonged to Consolidated Trust. But my knowledge, my architectural thinking, my methodologies, those belong to me. 6 months to operational. Another 6 to industry leading. Catherine extended her hand. When can you start? We negotiated fast. Salary up 20%, an equity stake, complete authority over technology, title of Chief Technology Officer. I signed that afternoon. Start date Monday. That weekend I didn't just plan Vertex Finance's infrastructure. I thought hard about what I'd left behind. Here's something most people don't understand about complex systems. There's a concept in programming called dependency hell, where systems rely on other systems in ways that aren't obvious. Change one thing and 17 others break in ways you'd never predict. Documentation can list the dependencies, but without deep understanding, you're defusing a bomb by reading a manual. My infrastructure at Consolidated Trust was a masterpiece of intentional dependencies. Each system optimized for its specific needs, secured in unconventional ways, structured for performance. Brilliant architecture, but it needed intimate knowledge to maintain. I'd been that knowledge for 15 years. Every break I fixed. Every update I implemented. Every integration I managed. I was the living manual. Nathan had just fired the manual. Monday morning at Vertex Finance felt electric. A beautiful space. An enthusiastic team. Catherine introducing me to 30 people, and making clear I had full authority and full backing. By Tuesday afternoon I'd assembled my core team, 5 senior developers hungry to build something great. We mapped the infrastructure plan, modern frameworks where they made sense, custom solutions where they were needed, security as the foundation. I showed them something I'd never gotten to implement at Consolidated Trust, a rotating real-time encryption approach. Instead of encrypting data at rest, we'd encrypt it during transmission using keys that rotated constantly. Every transaction generated a unique encryption key that expired after 30 seconds. Even if someone intercepted the data, it would be useless by the time they tried to decrypt it. My team was fascinated. One developer, a brilliant woman named Lisa Chun, immediately saw the implications. This would make us virtually immune to data breaches in transit. Exactly. Wednesday we started coding. Meanwhile, my phone kept buzzing with calls from Consolidated Trust. I ignored everyone. Wednesday night, 3:47 a.m., my phone lit up. Unknown number. Normally I wouldn't have answered, but something made me pick up. Margaret, I'm so sorry to call. It was James Kowalski, a developer from my old team, good programmer, decent person. I know you don't owe us anything, but we're in full crisis. The entire secure data portal crashed an hour ago. Customer authentication is failing. Nobody can get into their accounts. Nathan has everyone here and we can't figure out what happened. Nothing was changed. I sat up. Nothing at all? Well, we pushed the security certificate renewal Monday. But that's automated. It's been working for years. The certificate renewal. Of course. Here's what had happened. The security certificates were set to auto-renew every 90 days. But the renewal process I designed required the Cascade protection system to temporarily reroute authentication through the backup servers while the primary servers updated their certificates. With Nathan's team having stripped my 3-layer protection down to a single layer, the renewal process had nowhere to reroute. The primary servers updated and went offline. The backup tried to activate, but couldn't authenticate without the updated certificates. The whole thing looped and crashed the system. James, that renewal has a dependency chain. Certificates update, then 3 specific services restart in sequence. Not simultaneously. In sequence. Database authentication first, wait 30 seconds, then API gateway, wait 30 seconds, then customer portal. It's in the documentation, section 12, subsection 4. Silence. Then quietly. I'll find it. Thank you, Margaret. Seriously. But I knew finding the documentation wouldn't be enough. They'd need to manually override the authentication loop. And the only account with that authority was my old admin account, the one I'd locked. I hung up and couldn't sleep. Around 6 a.m., news broke that Consolidated Trust systems were back online, crisis handled. I learned later they'd spent 4 hours trying to access my admin account before calling in an external security firm to build a new override account, at a cost of $50,000 for emergency overnight service. At Vertex Finance that morning, Catherine called me into her office, scrolling her tablet, clearly amused. Consolidated Trust had a major outage last night. For hours, complete customer lockout. Stock dropped 2%. Social media's tearing them apart. She looked up. You wouldn't know anything about that. I kept my face neutral. I resigned last week. Whatever happens, there isn't my concern anymore. Her knowing smile said everything. Well, their loss is our gain. How's our build going? Over the next 3 weeks, we made incredible progress. Core authentication built, database architecture set, security protocols in place, everything clean, modern, and documented for team maintenance. We also built something special. Predictive load balancing. A system that analyzed user patterns and predicted traffic spikes before they hit. If the data showed heavier traffic on the 1st and 15th of every month, thanks to paychecks, the system automatically allocated more server resources those days. It was like the infrastructure could think ahead. Consolidated Trust, meanwhile, was struggling. News of the outage spread. Customers started leaving. Stock kept sliding. 2 weeks later, it happened again. Their mobile banking app died completely. Error messages for everyone, 9 hours of outage, 9 hours of fury. This time I knew exactly what had gone wrong before I even heard the details. Nathan's team had pushed an update to the mobile app without updating the API endpoints. So the app was speaking new protocols to servers still expecting the old ones. A basic mistake. I'd prevented that exact failure for 15 years by maintaining a master compatibility checklist. One Nathan had apparently tossed out as outdated documentation. He called himself Tone Gone Cocky Replaced with Stress. Margaret, it's Nathan. Look, I know we didn't part well. I'm calling to see if you'd consult with us. Temporarily. We're having technical difficulties. We'll pay whatever rate you want. Please call back. I deleted the voicemail. Catherine mentioned that Consolidated Trust CEO had called her too, asking to borrow their new CTO for consulting. She'd politely declined, telling him I was essential to current projects. The third outage came a month later, catastrophic. Their entire transaction processing system failed. Not just account access, actual processing. Payments didn't go through, transfers vanished, direct deposits disappeared. People's paychecks gone, bills unpaid, small businesses frozen. I found out later what caused it. Nathan's team had finally attempted the cloud migration, moving the customer database to new cloud servers, without realizing the transaction processing system had hard-coded IP addresses pointing to the old ones. When they shut down the old database servers to finish the migration, the transaction system couldn't find its data. Every transaction failed. I'd warned about exactly this scenario in my original response to their migration proposal, the one Nathan had publicly dismissed. News coverage was brutal. Federal regulators got involved. Class action lawyers started circling. Stock in freefall. Everyone from Consolidated Trust called Nathan, HR executives I'd never even met, all begging me to come back. I finally picked up when CEO Roger Hamilton called. Margaret, I'll be direct. We made a terrible mistake. The way you were treated was unacceptable. I'm offering whatever it takes. Name your salary, your title, complete authority, equity, whatever you want. I let him finish. Roger, I appreciate the call, but I'm not interested. I'm very happy at Vertex Finance. Margaret, please, we're in crisis. Customers leaving. Regulators investigating. Stock down 30%. You built our infrastructure. You know it better than anyone. You needed me when I was warning you about the risks. When I was flagging problems. You didn't listen. You let your CTO call me a replaceable code monkey in front of the entire department. Silence. I didn't know he said that. It wasn't just the words, Roger. It was the culture that made him think those words were acceptable. I gave you 15 years of loyalty and excellence. You treated me like an interchangeable part. You have the documentation. You have the code. You said it was all replaceable. So replace it. I hung up. That evening, Catherine took the executive team to dinner to celebrate. We'd finished core infrastructure ahead of schedule, and testing showed it was faster and more secure than any competitors. Catherine raised her glass to Margaret, who proved that technology isn't just code. It's architecture, artistry, and expertise. I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Valued. Respected. Home. Consolidated Trust's problems kept compounding. A fourth outage. A fifth. Their infrastructure was degrading. Nathan's team would fix one problem and create two more, playing whack-a-mole with critical systems. Nathan was terminated. The consulting firm got dismissed. Consolidated Trust scrambled to recruit infrastructure architects, but their reputation had gone toxic. Nobody wanted a sinking ship. 2 months after I left, the announcement came. Consolidated Trust Bank was being acquired. A larger conglomerate bought them at a fraction of their previous value. Shareholders furious. Executives fired. A major regional player, absorbed, dismantled, erased. The acquiring bank brought in their own technology team and ripped out all of my infrastructure, replacing it with standardized systems. 15 years of work deleted. Part of me mourned that. I'd been proud of what I built. But infrastructure without respect is just code, and code is replaceable. Vertex Finance meanwhile thrived. Our systems drew attention. Industry publications wrote features. Customers switched to us for speed, security, and reliability. Our rotating encryption key system became legendary. In our first year we had absolutely zero successful data breaches, while other banks were losing millions to cybercriminals. We didn't lose a single dollar. Security firms requested meetings just to understand our approach. We won awards: Best Banking Technology, Most Innovative Infrastructure, Highest Customer Satisfaction. 6 months after I joined, our customer base grew 40%. Stock tripled. Catherine promoted me to Executive Vice President of Technology, with a board seat. My equity stake became genuinely valuable. But more than the money or the title, I had my purpose back. We built with customers in mind: single parents, elderly folks, small business owners, real people whose lives worked better when technology worked right. We documented not just what our code did, but why. We cross-trained team members and built a culture where questions were encouraged and expertise respected. A year after leaving Consolidated Trust, I keynoted a banking technology conference: Infrastructure Architecture, Security Protocols, Building Systems That Scale. James Kowalski was in the audience. He approached me after. That was brilliant, Margaret. I learned more in 40 minutes than in 2 years of other sessions. Over coffee, he told me everything: the chaos after I left, the panic, the desperate attempts to understand systems beyond their expertise, Nathan's firing, the acquisition, the dismantling. We tried, he said. But you'd built something that required your level of expertise to maintain. Nathan thought programming was just typing code. He learned too late. What are you doing now? I asked. Infrastructure work for the acquiring bank. It's stable, but nothing special. I handed him my card. We're hiring experienced developers who want to build something special. Email me your resume if you're interested. His face lit up. Seriously? After everything? You were always a good programmer, James. And you treated people with respect. That matters. James joined Vertex Finance 2 months later. 3 other developers from my old team followed, good people caught in Nathan's ego trip, who just wanted to do good work. Together we built something remarkable. Infrastructure that became the industry benchmark, security government agencies studied, performance competitors couldn't touch. More importantly, we built culture. A place where expertise was valued, where loyalty ran both directions, where code monkey would get you fired, not applauded. 2 years after that conference room humiliation, I made the cover of a major tech publication under the headline The Architect: How Margaret Holloway Built Banking's Best Infrastructure. The piece covered everything: the Consolidated Trust years, my dramatic departure, Vertex Finance's rise, Catherine's quotes on respecting technical expertise, the metrics proving our superiority. It also mentioned briefly what happened to Consolidated Trust, the outages, the collapse, the acquisition, as a cautionary tale about dismissing expertise. Nathan moved to a small fintech startup as an individual contributor. No management responsibilities, his reputation trailing him everywhere. Roger Hamilton retired early. pushed out by the board ahead of the acquisition. Meanwhile, we kept moving the industry forward. We open-sourced some of our security protocols. Other banks adopted them, and the entire industry's baseline security improved because we shared knowledge instead of hoarding it. We started a mentorship program, training young developers properly. Not bootcamp-level surface knowledge, but deep infrastructure understanding, alongside professional values. Students reached out constantly, asking how to handle disrespect, when to leave versus stay. My answer stayed consistent. Know your worth, build excellent work, demand respect, and understand that loyalty has to run both ways. Companies that treat people as replaceable parts eventually learn that some parts really aren't. 3 years after walking out, Vertex Finance was valued at $8 billion. My equity was worth more than my entire 15 years at Consolidated Trust combined. But money wasn't the actual victory. The victory was building excellence with people who valued it, creating infrastructure that served customers well, mentoring the next generation, and proving that expertise, experience, and respect matter. Consolidated Trust doesn't exist anymore. The brand retired, the infrastructure deleted, 15 years of my work erased. But the knowledge I built, the expertise I developed, the approaches I mastered, those were never theirs. Those belonged to me, and I took them somewhere that understood their value. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Nathan had shown basic respect, if he'd listened to my concerns and valued expertise over ego. Consolidated Trust would probably still exist, thriving, competitive, infrastructure updated incrementally while staying stable. Everyone happy. Nathan would still be CTO. Roger would still be CEO. Those executives would still have careers. But Nathan chose differently. He chose ego, chose to dismiss 15 years with 6 words. Those 6 words cost shareholders billions, cost thousands their jobs, cost customers their trust, cost executives their careers. Those same 6 words freed me to find a place where my work was valued, to build something better. Margaret Holloway wasn't a replaceable code monkey. She was an architect who built competitive advantage through sophisticated infrastructure. When she left, she took that capability with her. The market valued her expertise at $8 billion, the gap between what Consolidated Trust lost and what Vertex Finance gained. Nathan valued it at 0. The market disagreed conclusively. That's not revenge. That's vindication, objective, measurable proof that expertise matters, experience matters, institutional knowledge matters. My team at Vertex Finance is 47 people strong now. Every one of them could get recruited elsewhere. Many get offers regularly. Our retention rate sits at 94%. People stay because they're valued. We pay well, offer equity, offer flexibility, but more than that, we offer respect, recognition, a voice. The things that actually make work meaningful. When someone identifies a problem, we listen. When someone proposes a solution, we evaluate it seriously. When someone achieves excellence, we celebrate it publicly. Sounds basic. It should be basic. But it's rare enough that we've built a competitive advantage around it. The best developers in banking technology want to work here, not just for the pay, but for our reputation of valuing people properly. That reputation started the day I walked out of that conference room. Industry people noticed. Stories spread. Nathan's code monkey comment became infamous. An example of catastrophically bad management. Business schools teach it as a case study in talent mismanagement now. Consolidated Trust's collapse gets analyzed in MBA programs and leadership seminars, always landing at the same conclusion. Dismissing expertise has consequences. But case studies miss the human part, the feeling of 15 years reduced to nothing, the sting of public humiliation, the exact moment you decide enough is enough. That transformation is what the Payback Office channel is really about. Not revenge, transformation. From accepting disrespect to demanding better. From hoping employers value you to knowing your value regardless. I could have stayed, endured. Nathan kept my head down, collected paychecks. Plenty of people do, and that's valid. Everyone's circumstances differ. But I had options. 15 years of excellent work had built my reputation. My expertise was valuable. I could leave, so I did. That's privilege, and I recognize it. Not everyone can walk away. Financial obligations, family circumstances, market conditions, 100 factors can make staying necessary. But for those who do have options, staying somewhere that doesn't value you, out of inertia or fear, This story is permission to recognize that loyalty to a disloyal organization is misplaced, permission to bet on yourself. The day I resigned, I was terrified. 15 years of stability gone. What if Vertex Finance didn't work out? What if I just made a horrible mistake? But staying would have been the mistake. Staying meant accepting that my dedication meant nothing, that expertise didn't matter. Leaving meant betting that my skills had value, and that someone would recognize and treat that value appropriately. Vertex Finance proved that bet correct. 5 years later, we serve 11 million customers, process $42 billion in monthly transactions, and have never been breached. I've mentored 53 developers, 7 promoted to senior positions, 2 who started their own companies using approaches learned here. Catherine and I sit on the board together now discussing acquisitions of our own. Companies with good customer bases but weak technology, which we bring into our ecosystem and upgrade, giving their customers better service. The opposite of consolidated trust. Instead of being acquired because of technological failure, we acquire others because of technological strength. Banking publications running pieces on our rise always mention my history. 15 years at Consolidated Trust, the dramatic departure, their collapse. Journalists reach out to Nathan for comment. He declines every interview. His decisions are permanent record now. I've never spoken publicly about him specifically. When asked, I redirect to the broader issues: management culture, respect for expertise, the importance of institutional knowledge. But it was personal. Still is. Just a code monkey is burned into my memory, still stings 5 years on. The difference is, it doesn't define me anymore. For a while I replayed that moment constantly. What I should have said, how I should have responded, anger and humiliation and hurt tangled together. Time and success created distance. Now I mostly feel grateful. Grateful it happened while I still had options. Grateful it pushed me towards something better. My parents are proud. My father, who fixed neighbors' cars for free, gets to see his daughter on magazine covers. My mother, who taught neighborhood kids piano, watches me keynote conferences. They're both retired and comfortable now. I made sure of it. They taught me empathy, taught me to see the people behind the systems. That lesson shaped everything I ever built because infrastructure serves people. Banking systems aren't abstractions, they're how someone pays rent, receives a paycheck, saves for retirement. When systems fail, real people suffer. My ments understand this now too. Technology has human consequences, so you build thoughtfully, test thoroughly, document carefully. That philosophy is baked into Vertex Finance's culture. We're building trust, one smooth transaction, one instant login, one protective security layer at a time. Trust translated into code. When a culture aligns around shared values, remarkable things happen. Our development speed runs twice the industry average. Our bug rate is a fifth of it. Our customer satisfaction leads the sector. That's what happens when people are valued, respected, and empowered. For anyone currently undervalued or disrespected, build your options. Quietly, carefully, consistently. Network. Update your skills. Document your achievements. Then, when your moment comes, and it probably will, you get to choose. Stay or leave. Accept or reject. I chose to leave. It's the best professional decision I've ever made. The Payback Office channel shares these stories as roadmaps for recognizing disrespect, for building options, for making the choice, for understanding that your value isn't determined by people who don't understand what you bring. 15 years of dedication. One moment of public disrespect. One resignation. One company's collapse. One company's rise. Clear consequences. Clear outcomes. Clear lessons. How organizations treat people determines outcomes. Treat people well, and you create the conditions for excellence. Treat them poorly, and you create the conditions for failure. Catherine Wu provided that leadership at Vertex Finance. Nathan Cross didn't at Consolidated Trust. The market delivered its verdict. $8 billion worth. 5 years later, I'm still building. Still mentoring. Still pushing banking technology forward. Working with people who value what I bring. Bad moments can create good outcomes. Painful experiences can generate real growth. Professional setbacks can open the door to advancement. Margaret Holloway walked out, signed with Vertex Finance, built something better, created value, demonstrated expertise, proved her worth. This was never really about code. It's about knowing your worth, finding people who recognize it, and building something excellent together. If this resonates, if you believe workplaces should value people properly, consider subscribing. We're building a community around these principles. Real stories, real consequences, real lessons about respect, value, and professional dignity. We're heading toward 6,000 subscribers who understand that some people aren't as replaceable as management thinks. That expertise has value. That respect matters.